Welcome to the Clemson Dubcast. It is Friday, September 12th. Beautiful late morning in Clemson, South Carolina. 24 hours from now in Atlanta. We're going to start learning a lot more about this Clemson football team, where it is right now, one way or the other, because it's hard to imagine this team getting out of Atlanta with a win without playing a lot better in so many areas on both sides of the ball. We have some pretty good insight into what's been going on within the walls of the football office, what Dabo Swinney's been saying, who he's been going after, maybe everyone, what the injury situation looks like. It is all at TigerIllustrated.com, now a part of the On3 network. Very happy to be a part of it. $10 a month for our site has never stretched more, just in terms of all the stuff you're able to have access to across the network, in addition to what you get here within the bubble. So this podcast has been going since August of 2018, more than 770,000 downloads of more than 340 episodes. And my great friends, Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold at Parham Smith Archenhold Law Firm, have been a part of it for every single one. They are longtime Clemson people, and they give you the experience and the results you need. Their team can help with personal injury and medical malpractice cases. They currently serve North Carolina and South Carolina with offices in Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charleston. If you or your family has been injured, I want you to help you get the compensation you deserve. Schedule a free consultation by calling 864-301-8767 or by going to parhamlaw.com. That's PARHAM law.com. Celero Commerce, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's CELERO commerce.com. Okay, two guests today, two very close observers of Clemson's football program. Eric McLean, sort of from afar. Ellis Johnson, who coached at both Clemson and South Carolina. He lives at Clemson now. His son plays for the Tigers. Ellis goes to practice regularly, so he's always a good person to talk to about what's going on. Here we go. Enjoy. All right, joined once again by my friend Eric McLean. Eric, I think you came on at the same exact time, maybe last year, or I could just maybe. We could not even do this interview. I could just go splice like 30 minutes of that. What's wrong? What happened to the team we heard about and saw during camp? It's the same stuff. Has this how maddening is this for you? Not necessarily just from the perspective of you being a Clemson guy, but you being in this business, you also want to get stuff right.
Yeah, exactly. And, it is funny, because I remember a very similar conversation. And, I think the interesting thing that we've been hearing, and that I believe it's stuff that you write, but that practice is great and practice is flying around and guys are making plays and we're making the right decisions. We're throwing the ball downfield. And the fact that it doesn't translate to the game is just so shocking. Because we're not there. I mean, I'm sure I could be if I wanted to, but, we're not at practice. We don't get to see this. And so it's just the confusing thing of why doesn't it translate? Why doesn't it make it to the most important 3 hours, of your week? And that is frustrating. That's baffling because I know what this coaching staff puts into it. I see the people that Coach Swinney has brought in and honed and developed, and other guys from other places come in to make a difference. And then the player, development and the guys that Clemson has, and, the expectation for them to go out there and play at the level that they just haven't met yet is frustrating. And so, I think at the end of the day, my mind shift has kind of changed a little bit because there is so much money involved. These guys are getting paid so much, but they are still kids and they are still learning. And just because you give them a bunch of money doesn't mean the process or the development piece isn't the same. I just think you have the right to be a little bit more frustrated when guys getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars don't deliver, and millions in some instances.
Eric, it's fascinating you bring that up, because the money part and the accountability part of that, and the, I guess, more justified license fans have to blast away. Well, one of the most fascinating turns of Dabo's entire tenure as it relates to how he publicly handles criticizing his own is, dude, this is, I mean, have you come away with the same interpretation or reaction? The last two Tuesday press conferences, he has unloaded on Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik and others as well. That ain't the normal script. Normally it's tear their asses up in private, as you recall from being within those walls, but build them up publicly. Let me get my sort of read on it, semi-educated, is that he's like, hey man, Cade, you're the second highest paid player in the building behind me. And Garrett Riley, like, we made you the highest paid dang coordinator in the country when we brought you here. Y'all got to take it. Is that your read on it too?
Well, I think it's yes, to answer the question, yes, and it's justified, as you said, that this isn't amateurism anymore. This is semi-pro at least, and relatively professional with the way things are happening. So there's that room, not only for fans and writers and folks in the media to be more critical and not just say, oh, well, they're kids, because that's the approach for, 4 years of my career that I had, because that's how I did things and that's how I grew up playing this sport. But now that millions of dollars are involved, there is more accountability. There is more expectation. There is a reason that you're getting paid all that money, and it's to perform. It's not because you're a good person. It's not to graduate. It's to throw touchdowns and call touchdown plays. And at the end of the day, that's a unintended, I'm sure, but a big, compromise and consequence of this new world. We want a bunch of money floating around. Great. Well, this comes with it too. And, I think certainly the way that Coach Swinney doesn't play about money. That dude grew up dirt poor. And if he's dishing it out and managing it this way and giving guys, what they want and what they perceive value is, well, you got to earn that. And so it's one of those things where, absolutely. I think there's a whole new side, kind of this business. And it's going to be fascinating just how it continues to change and alter, the way you kind of do things here, because it's a lot of money and it's a big investment. And, even part of it is, we mentioned the fans and why they have the right to be upset. A lot of that is their donations and their money coming in. It's not, this money comes from somewhere. And so it's a fascinating new twist, man, that I think 4 years ago when all this was being discussed and certainly even up to, 2 years ago before it was such a huge ordeal, I don't think people were really thinking about this as a consequence and the accountability and holding people to the standard even more now because you are making and getting paid so much money.
If you think back to January when they retained all their important pieces, all of them, and there was great celebration over that, and justified celebration, of course. But I remember thinking and even asking some folks sort of on the inside, like, hey, while y'all are, of course, overjoyed that these deals were made to keep them here, is there still a message of, hey, Peter Woods and TJ Parker, you got to be better. Hey, Cade Klubnik, you still had some bad, poor decisions, South Carolina, whatever. The point being, you're getting all this money, for your fair market value, whatever, but you're also getting it based probably more on what you can be than you have been. How about that part of it? I'm guessing this is a guess. I'm guessing that's part of what frustrates Dabo as well, because Clemson Clemson came to the table and turned four of these guys into millionaires, along with paying significant money to a large number of the other headliners.
Yeah, and I don't have much details on who got paid what, and we hear the speculation and things of that nature. But I was certainly ecstatic about Clemson keeping those guys and thinking the natural progression of, okay, now you're junior, now you're senior, you've been in this program, you've had unbelievable success. Now it's time to get even more. And, not to say that still won't come. It's still extremely early. We're 2 games in, and Peter Woods has probably been double teamed every play. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to measure, players like that a little bit differently. Now, TJ Parker and seeing some effort and maybe lack thereof of sometimes, that's a little confusing because all I heard all offseason that he's challenging people to get up at 4 a.m. to be early, to work out more, to do things of that nature. So why that's not translating, and who knows, maybe it's bad two games. And we see him starting this Saturday play outside of his mind, consistently for the rest of the year. But I just think when money gets involved, man, things get weirder and things become more business-like. And, it's a very interesting time. And, when you talk about not getting your return, when you talk about not getting your money's worth and things of that nature, it's a strange way to feel about a game that wasn't even thought about for 100+ years.
Eric, before NIL was even remotely in the galaxy, before revenue sharing wasn't even, nothing. We were in a different time, 2015. You and a bunch of your teammates will forever look back and wonder, what if we didn't have just a few guys who might have been thinking more about getting to the next level, protecting themselves, whatever, preventing injuries. And that was before revenue sharing.
Right.
What can you reflect on those two sort of dynamic, sort of then and now, but y'all were dealing with some elements of it even then under a different model.
Right. Yeah, I think what's fascinating with that is, we didn't even know what to look for, right? Like, I think that kind of, because it happened to us in 15, and there's a couple of key players, on the defensive side of the ball, and it's probably pretty relevant if you go back, or pretty easy to see if you go back and watch the playoff games, specifically the national championship. Guys just not giving the same effort, guys just not in the same place and paying attention to detail. It's not that they were physically not able to make it happen, that there was something else, that popped up. And, because that happened in 15, I think guys like Ben Boulware and Christian Wilkins and Deshaun Watson and others probably could see if anything like that was creeping in, and they could nip it in the bud right away, right? They could approach those guys, say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we're trying to be special. Don't ruin this, for woulda, coulda, shoulda. And, even some of those guys, that did that, draft stock fell a little bit. Some had decent NFL careers and made it, but, others didn't. And so was that worth the trade of, collegiate immortality? I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But yeah, and now that things are like that, and there's always forever, as long as this game has been played and players have been drafted and paid a bunch of money, there has been the fact of other people whispering in their ear, hey, don't get hurt. Hey, think about this. Hey, don't maybe go too hard here. Stay away from this pile. And, at the end of the day, if you're playing that way and if you're listening to those things, you're probably going to end up getting hurt anyway because you're hesitating and you're not doing the natural thing that you've done your whole life, and that's play 100% hair on fire. But it's always been a thing, man. And it's just... guys that think that way, especially early in the season. I mean, there's one thing of these bowl games, and I can kind of understand, how that is now. Would I have done it? Probably not. But I've also never been staring down, $10+ million and maybe missing that out if I get hurt in this game, not be drafted in the first round. So it is a problem that's always been there. Is it made even worse now that there's financial investment and people feel slighted of effort in playing? Maybe that's probably a couple years down the road before we get a full grasp on that.
All right, I'm guessing you are not bailing on the idea that this offense can still be really dang good. And probably part of that reason is the splendid film review you did earlier this week on the Troy game and opportunities left and right that are there that just aren't being made, aren't being, cemented by or taken advantage of by Cade Klubnik. Is that your feeling that they're really not that far away right now?
Yeah, I certainly, because everything that we thought about in the preseason is still there. I still think Cade has the potential to be, the best quarterback in the country. It just has to go, just has to be the guy, that he was in most of last season and grow from that and take the steps and, the hesitation and, not going to the right reads or getting off a read because he feels quote unquote pressure that may or may not be there. Those things are just, that's sophomore Cade Klubnik. That shouldn't be senior Cade. Like, that shouldn't be a guy that I know has put in the work. I saw the work and saw how much better he got a year ago to so far have regressed from junior to senior years is weird. I'm not sure totally the reason behind that. And again, showing those plays, there's a couple, Larry, that I know you saw, but he's staring it down. He's looking at it. And I just don't know. All I can see is his helmet. And what I perceive is where he's looking, which is Bryant Wesco screaming down the field wide open, 20 yards, 30 yards away from people. And so why that ball wasn't ripped to him, I don't know. And so that's something that obviously I'm sure if I see it, I'm sure they see it, and I'm sure they're hammering it ad nauseum. But it's just playing free. It's just being who you are, what you've done your whole life. And I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if I'm a part of that rat poison that was hyping guys up way too much. And I guess Coach Swinney and I need to have a post-spring meeting and say, how do you want me to handle this? You want me to tell you guys suck or you're good? Which way, do you want me to go to help you? Because I'm happy to do that. Either way that he wants. But, I think it is unfortunate that there was so much expectation. There was so much, hype and excitement placed on this team, not just one player, this team. And they just, haven't lived to that, to a game and a half of football. Now, the way they finished, I do think, that there's something to perk your eyes or ears up about. I think there is something to get excited about because I did see Cade throwing the ball with anticipation. I saw him throwing the ball before guys were making their cuts because he knew what the defense was doing. He knew where they were going. And that's what I expected. I expected to see a lot more of that all year, and maybe we will starting now. And maybe that was it. Maybe that was the ticket. I expected to see the offensive line play like veterans and be, a much stronger presence, the defense to be, suffocating, flying around, hitting people. And I've seen more of that from the defense. Now, you'd like to see, again, more prolific stats and things of that nature. I think they've certainly are night and day better from a year ago, but offensively have to do your end of the bargain, have to keep up to what, the standard is and what, they, I'm sure, thought, but we thought this team could look like.
With the receiving core, you can see how there's sort of a chain reaction of, oh gosh, Cade's got the deer in headlights look, and that impacting the receivers' comportment. I'm not justifying it, but you can just sort of see how one could affect the other, and then you add in Antonio Williams being out, extenuating circumstances. What I can't make a connection to is from Cade doing the 23 Cade thing and the offensive line looking as just off kilter and in the wrong places. That's been, what do you chalk that up to, and how, and that doesn't have anything to do with Cade, does it?
Right. No, it doesn't. Let me touch on the receivers really quickly because I think that's a fascinating thing too. I think I never de-emphasized the value of Antonio Williams. For any time we spoke Clemson receivers, Clemson offense, I was very, very intentional about saying he is the alpha. He is the guy. Like, he makes the ship run. But I didn't think the other guys would be so far behind from a leadership, production, ready to step up place. Now, I also didn't think Antonio would be out after the second drive of the game against LSU. But I did not think we would see drop off if that happened to any of them, any of the four. I thought it'd just be, okay, here we go. Next guy up, let's roll. And maybe that's a Cade thing, though. Maybe the comfortability with Antonio and him not being there is even more of a big deal than we can even know. You're right, without asking him that or without, real transparency and seeing that. But, those guys have to make big plays. When the ball is in your area and that ball is thrown to you and it's 50-50, it needs to be in the days of old and even last year where it's actually 70-30 in favor of Clemson receivers going to get it and coming down with that thing. You can't have drops. You can't have misfires. You can't slip and fall. My goodness, I've seen more guys slip and fall this year, it feels like, than in a long, long time when they're running or trying to make a cut. So let's get our footing right. Even running routes. And so, from that instance, let's get it going. Obviously, seeing the burst from Bryant Wesco last week was great. And what I thought, again, would just be there immediately. But it took 6 quarters to get there, and that's fine. And just hitting other guys. I mean, Tyler Brown has been open ad nauseum and either late or not getting it to him is a fascinating thing. So again, hopefully we see that change. Hopefully we see those guys continue to get on the same page. It's a team. They're getting better. I can give you all the coach talk. I know that, and I've lived it. But again, when you're this old, when you're this experienced, you need to fire on all cylinders a little quicker. And who knows, maybe they will. This is a big test this week, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a lot. The offensive line thing is obviously frustrating because of my former position, my room, guys that I have watched grow and develop and have seen, really good things from. And again, when you go through that full off season of, okay, here we are, this is who we want to be, let's go. You just have a higher expectation. And I will say this too, as fun as it is to cross train and as great as it is to put guards at tackle and tackles at guard and right and left and all these different things, that can create some confusion. That can create some, oh shoot, I'm lined up at left guard. I usually play right tackle. What do I do here? And then there's some hesitation and there's some doubt. And we see guys just running free. And here's the deal too, Larry. I mean, I could have probably had 20, 30 plays on that thing of something wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be overbearing. And it's not my place at the end of the day. I'm not a coach. And, maybe they teach it differently than how I was raised and how I learned things. But there was significantly bad things. And I think I read this from you where Coach Swinney said, it's not but one or two guys, and maybe it's just one guy every play, but it can't happen every play. Like we need all 11 going the same way or it's not going to work. If you got 10 out of 11 and that one misses a block or doesn't catch the ball or doesn't throw the ball or makes the wrong cut, guess what? The play is ruined. And so that's the interesting thing about football. And again, there's been great things. There's been really fun things to see. But the amount of disappointment and the amount of MAs and the amount of just flat out getting whipped is a slightly alarming and frustrating to see, especially from a guy that we think is clearly one of the best recruiters of this era in Matt Luke, that we think is one of the best coaches in this era in Matt Luke. And for that not to translate with a bunch of 4, 5, 6-year guys is slightly concerning and frustrating.
Eric, you have accomplished a lot in your life, long list of impressive things, but I think your biggest life accomplishment might have happened this week when you got Brent Key to smile and talk and give more than 2-word answers. How did you do that, man? Let's dig in. Let's dig into that. Was this before? You said this is before his Tuesday.
It was before the press conference. It was
day?
actually. It was Monday.
Okay.
It was Monday at 2:30. So I don't know what happened from that 24-hour span to get to the press conference. But at the end of the day, I love that dude. I think he's one of the best coaches, in football. The way that he has built this Georgia Tech team. It went from super. I don't even know what to call it before, with all the sayings and logos and Waffle House, whatever, which I understand that had to be done to help make them relevant and get them, spoken about in a certain way and get them excited with recruits. But he's totally changed it to hard, nose football, punch you right in the face. We're going to build these lines of scrimmage and we're going to surround it with really nice skill. And that's been fun to see. But he and I have an unbelievable relationship. We will just randomly call each other at any hour of the night and just talk. If something comes into his head, he'll call me, and same thing, vice versa. If I have seen something or, heard something, and he's a great dude, man. I hope he stays at Georgia Tech forever, being a former player, and I'd love to keep him in this conference. But, if somebody comes calling, a blue blood or something of that nature, he will take it to another level. And I don't think there's any question about that. So I think a lot of that goes into it. And, just being former linemen, we kind of look alike. Like KG calls us her favorite twins. So it's always funny when we get the three of us on a podcast, and he's a gritty dude, and he knows how to play the game. I'm sure all of that was very on purpose, very calculated. Whether it was trying to send a message to his team, trying to do the thing from a hard nosed lineman look or whatever. But he does everything with great calculation and very intentional.
Paul Strelo, who covers recruiting for us at Tiger Illustrated, he had a great line yesterday or the day before when all the comments were coming after people watched that 5-minute press conference, and somebody said, imagine being one of those media members and sitting through Atlanta traffic for that. And Paul said, maybe the Atlanta traffic explains why he was acting that
way. Exactly. It's just, Atlanta's a tough place to live, man. It's a tough place to be. I get it.
That's the way I look every time I'm driving through Atlanta, talking to my wife or kids.
I'm headed that way this weekend, so I guess that's going to be me on the huddle. They're going to ask me a question. I'm going to just give a 2-second answer and move on.
Actually, I did some asking around last night from some folks in Atlanta who are plugged in, and was told that they had actually had a really good practice that day, and he felt good about it, but he was just acting that way to push buttons and to
exactly.
And I love that.
That's what he does. Let me tell you something. They had a scrimmage. I'll peel back the curtain here a little bit. I'm not going to say when. Y'all can figure it out if you want to. They had a scrimmage during camp. And I'm talking with people, and he's like, oh, man, we look good. Like, we were flying around, this and that. After practice, all he says is, we suck. These guys can't do anything right, this and that. If we were ready to play today, Colorado would kill us. I'm like, whoa, what happened in the 20 minutes? I just heard raving reviews from some of these people at practice. He's got it. And I love the gamesmanship. I love the back and forth. He's a fun dude, man. He's awesome.
Eric, is there a lesson there? Obviously, Dabo, Hall of Fame coach, an unimpeachable record. Will go down in history as one of the greats. So we have to have that disclaimer. But I don't think it's unfair to ask, can they take some lessons from that? Because it seems like one of the issues is them being a bit too impressed with themselves when they're practicing against themselves.
Yeah. I think, when you're at the standard that Clemson is, and, when you think you have what you do, and again, they still might, it's so early,
yes.
For us to make any type of proclamations about, whatever. This team could still win a national championship, and we go back and watch this and say, what the heck were we talking about? What were we so flustered about? And then we turn on the tape and we remember. But I think you just have that expectation, and when you see it, and when you see a guy like Ashton Hampton dominate Antonio Williams, or Antonio Williams go up and make a catch over Khalil Barnes, or Walker Parks block Peter Woods, and Cade fit the ball in tight knit windows over Wade Woodaz, and things of that nature, you're like, dang, that was good. That was fun to see. And, now if you're talking about sharing all that and telling us, or, being a little too excited, then sure. But that's probably more of a you and I thing, and maybe more of a me thing of, pumping the brakes and maybe not exclaiming the best this, the best that. But at the end of the day, that's what I expected when I saw it. And, if you can't live up to those expectations, that's more of a you thing than a me thing, probably.
And I'll say this, to be fair, Dabo wasn't coming to the in front of the cameras during August camp and saying, we're going to be great and we're going to light the world on fire. I mean, I remember him saying, yeah, this defensive line, we'll see. I mean, they didn't look too good late last year. And it was more the information coming out of practices about how good they felt like they looked. So there's a key distinction that needs to be made there, because we're talking about what Brent Key is saying to the media. And also, in fairness, Eric, a year ago, we were asking, after the Georgia debacle, we're asking the same questions, and we're asking ourselves, could they really have been that off on what they saw out of Cade and the offense during camp? Well, it turns out they weren't all that off, because Cade had a really dang good year. So they were on to something. So I'm not bailing on the idea that this offense can get it together. I just look at Tech, and boy, what I think is the best case scenario is obvious. It's Clemson walks out of there with a double-digit win and is feeling great about itself. But the worst case to me would be offense gets some things figured out, and you're like, okay, all right, that's what we thought we would see. But then the defense gets housed. And the concern for me against all that eye candy is Ronan Hannafin, Tink Kelly, Ricardo Jones, maybe even Shelton Lewis, because not that great of a tackler against Big Haynes King, and even the second level a little bit with Woodaz and Sammy Brown being sort of missing some of their gaps and such. That's the biggest concern to me on the defensive side, is just how are they? They just don't have the experience against this type of challenge. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I certainly, you're concerned because these guys are freaky offensively. Georgia Tech is, and unlike kind of Clemson, who's reaching right now a bit to find their identity and find out who they're going to be offensively, these guys know, and Coach Key is confident about that, and you can listen to that in the podcast we had with him, the conversation we had with him, and specifically talking about running the football. They are going to do that, and they're going to do that at a very high level, a very frequent level, and they're going to show it to you a bunch of different ways. I mean, he called it the 36 flavors of counter. He meant 31. I get it. That you want to add those extra bonus flavors. I'm with him. I would love that. But the different flavors of counter, and man, I've got a tape coming on Saturday, morning, about how they do that. It is impressive, man. I mean, they run the same play from 20 different sets, from 20 different motions, different combinations, where you see a quarterback counter read. I've never seen that before, and I'm sure I have with them, but from other people where it's counter. It looks counter night and day. And then all of a sudden the quarterback's reading the inline guy, he's pulling it. And it's like, wow, that's an interesting, twist on this play. And there's RPOs built into it where they motion a guy across the line of scrimmage, a jet sweep, and they're running counter. And then the quarterback sees before he hands it, the safety isn't respecting that guy that just motioned out. He pulls it, tosses out to him for a 40-yard gain. It's just, Haynes knows how to operate this offense flawlessly. He understands all the different aspects of it, and he is a hell of a player. That dude is as gritty, as tough, do whatever it takes for his team, whatever that is. If it's throw it 100 times, if it's running 100 times, he'll do it. And that's the way he was raised. That's the way he's grown up, in the state of Texas, and obviously done it at the highest level for a really long time. So I think the most dangerous thing that Clemson could see is if Haynes King in the second or third quarter starts getting up and doing a little bit of a limp, he's about to turn superhero mode, dude. So you better watch out. You better watch out.
And, watching that Colorado game, they opened the game, Georgia Tech does, with 3 straight turnovers, a high snap, a mishandled exchange, and then an interception on a pressure. What really stood out to me, and really I guess you could extend this in the comparison and wonder how Clemson and Cade Klubnik would have handled this, looking at the body language of not just Haynes King, but everybody, including Brent Key. I mean, as you said, he's chewing on that Sharpie, but he's not letting on that he's like, oh, what in the hell is going on here? But still, you just never, if you would have walked in the stadium at that point and not looked at the scoreboard and not seen the turnovers, you would never have known that they just opened the season with 3 straight turnovers. That mental toughness, you just wonder, you can just picture other players, other teams going into a total shell on the road, and that type of so that really speaks to that leadership from the trigger man, from the head coach, and that doesn't happen by accident.
No, I don't think there's any question about that. And you mentioned those turnovers that are super non-characteristic of a Coach Key team of a Haynes King led team. But they started last week with 2 turnovers quick too,
Yep.
and so that they're at 7 for the year, or excuse me, 5 for the year, and they had 10 all last season. And so to already be halfway there, 2 games in, how can Clemson capitalize on that? How can Clemson force that issue? And I'll tell you what, with that center, I'm putting Peter Woods and Capehart directly over that dude, and I'm making him sweat. And I want him snapping that ball like crazy, and just thinking about what he has to do, what's right in front of him, and challenging him. And maybe he's gotten fine, maybe he's gotten better. We'll see. But I am fully embracing that and just trying to make that dude think. Some shifts if he puts his head down, moving around. So when he comes back up, he's got a lot of thinking to do about what we're going to do, how we're going to approach it from a defensive perspective. And I'd like to see a little bit more blitzing too. Heat this guy up. Don't give Haynes, time. But the key with that is you have to stay gap sound. And you brought that up about guys maybe missing that or being out of place. You miss gaps with these guys, the cutback will be there. Jamal Haynes is going to be in the end zone. I mean, he gets out in a hurry, and Haynes King's stride is freaky. He's way faster than people anticipate when they're trying to take an angle on him.
And you better get him on the ground. That's hard to do.
Get him on the ground. He's a fighter.
All right, Eric, thank you so much. Looking forward to that Saturday AM breakdown. That should be fantastic. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you always, brother. Let's do it again. Game 3 next year, and let's see what happens.
Let's do it. As president of Harris Home in Anderson, South Carolina, Scott Junkins knows all about foundations and how to cover them beautifully. His client list includes Clemson University, BMW, and Greenville's Floor Field, along with thousands of homes and businesses throughout the area. Harris Home was previously Harris Flooring, but the next logical step was to expand beyond flooring and manage complete interior renovations. Scott has assembled an expert team that completely manages every step of any redesign project, from ideas to finishing touches with both residential and commercial projects. Open the door to more by going to discoverharris.com or by calling 864-225-8631. Listen up, Clemson Tiger fans. Founders Federal Credit Union has a new office right on campus in the Hendricks Center. We're here to serve you with the financial tools you need and the personalized service you deserve. Not on campus, Founders has an office conveniently located on Old Greenville Highway. Stop by or visit foundersfcu.com to learn more and apply for a membership. Relax, you're with Founders. Federally insured by NCUA. Membership qualification required. All right, joined by Ellis Johnson. And, man, before I hit record, you really hit on something that I've sort of been observing this week, that there's a lot of fans out there that are uneasy right now and maybe even upset, disgruntled. So can you perhaps retell what you just told me about your week and all your appearances on different radio shows across the Southeast?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. But once I get through, you and I will probably be disgruntled and sourpusses too. But Monday, I always do a podcast out of Memphis, and the host is an Auburn guy, but the producer is a Florida Gator. Of course, they're all down in the dumps, disgruntled, not happy. And then Tuesday, I was on an Auburn podcast, and they're a little bit more happy, but they're mad at everybody that says they hadn't played anybody yet. Then Wednesday evening, we do a regular one with Corn Blue, and usually it's Chuck Reedy and I come on and do an offense-defense thing on Carolina and Clemson, but he was gone, so Rick Sanford was on, and Rick's all puzzled and can't figure out what the heck's going on in Carolina. And then Thursday, my son didn't get on the travel squad to Georgia Tech, so he's all mad as hell. I'm trying to cheer him up. And then Friday, I always do Teddy Hefner on Friday mornings. And we were both trying to figure out Carolina and Clemson, but he was all disgruntled and talking about how bad it is in Columbia right now. Then I did a Tuscaloosa right after that. They are on suicide watch. I think they got a security guard with what's his name, head coach. So they still hadn't recovered from Florida State, and now I'm on with you. And Clemson struggled a little bit, but the fan base they're all disgruntled, want to know why they're not winning every game. And already got Cade the Heisman. So is anybody in the NCAA happy? I don't know.
Oregon fans.
Yeah.
Oregon and Florida State. Oregon and Florida State.
Yeah, they got a little reason to be happy, for sure.
But you really hit on something. Fans have always overreacted to the most recent result, but it feels heightened in this era, I guess, because there's frustration about the model. There's frustration about revenue sharing. There's frustration about playoff expansion. There's frustration about conference bloat, not really having the typical regional geographical footprint. And it feels to me like if you're doing well, everybody's happy. But at the first sign of trouble, it's like it's almost like they're about to bail. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and almost every point you brought up about overall structure of college football, don't even get me started, because I think all of it is destructive and damaging, and honestly, it's a little bit takes away from the game of college football. But that's another thing. But I think what's causing all this, people looking for knives to cut their wrists after 2 weeks, the hype and the build-up that goes into these seasons is really it's gotten ridiculous. There's so much social media, there's so much electronic media that the print media has to try to compete with it, and the TV and the radio, they got to find their niche. And everybody, including me and you sitting here talking on a podcast, everybody's trying to find something, that I guess you'd call it hyperbolic or something, where they can get some attention. And this buildup of football teams and players coming into seasons is what sets all this up for frustration. I think a good example you could get is Arch Manning. And I was on a podcast the other day with a guy who's real big in analytics and comes up with some crazy stuff. But he said the other day, I've studied it, and he said if a college quarterback doesn't have a minimum of 24 starts in college football and played successfully, I wouldn't draft him. And he was talking about Arch. He said everybody needs to back off on this kid and put too much pressure, too much expectations. He's going to have good players around him. He's going to play good, but he's not going to play good every time. And of course, he goes out and has a bad game the very first game. Everybody's turned him into a monster, where he was Mr. Wonderful 2 months ago. So he's just one example. And it happens to a lot of kids, and that, they think they can take it when it's all going good. But then all of a sudden, when it goes bad, and the negativity it's exaggerated so much by all the social media and other things that have around it today.
Do you think, though, that the fact that they're getting paid a lot of money now gives fans more justification to criticize more?
Some fans. I already said I'm not in favor of what they're doing right now with players with the money. I think they need to get paid, but they let it get off without properly structuring it. And they've got toothpaste out of the tube now. And you're paying 19-year-olds $3 million. What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
And, it's just stupid. I'm not saying some of them don't occasionally go out on an athletic field and do something that looks like $3 million, but they can't do it consistently. And then when they screw it up, everybody's down on them like they've been playing professional for 10 years. It's just stupid. And anybody with common sense ought to be able to look at it in the beginning from the outside and say, this is not logical. And so that's part of it, Larry. I think the more money they demand. I used to hear fans complain 15 years ago about parking going up, tickets going up, box costs, to get your luxury box again this year, trying to find a parking place, one of these parking condominiums. People were complaining back then before NIL even started. But the other thing I think that is putting gas on it is oil. What fans will sometimes say, I don't know if this kid deserves $2 million straight out of high school. But then he comes in and he leaves after 18 months and goes to another school. Now, you think that doesn't light a fire. And so it's all kind of, in my opinion, it's all out of whack and not good overall for college football.
It's even, I think, brought a change in approach from Dabo Swinney in how he publicly handles criticizing his star quarterback and his hotshot offensive coordinator, in that I've been covering this guy since 2004, before he was a head coach, but through his entire time as a head coach, he has always, whenever he's going nuclear on the team, he does it privately. But publicly, he builds them up. And, the example 2 years ago of Tyler from Spartanburg and all that, that was him sticking up for his program, for his players. There's been a turn the last couple of weeks where he's faced, I don't know if you've paid much attention to it, but he is he's been very critical of Cade Klubnik, very critical of Garrett Riley, and my interpretation is he's like, hey, y'all are getting paid the big bucks. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and treat you with kid gloves when the cameras are on. What do you think of that?
Well, a lot of coaches have coached or motivated through the media. I mean, that's nothing new. Now, because they're getting paid or whatever, I don't know. I haven't heard that. I mean, I was at practice the other day. He was raising Cain, but in my opinion, that's considered in private.
Yeah.
If you can't yell at them on the practice field, then you can't yell at them anywhere. And I don't think it necessarily has to be in your office with a closed door, to shut down a player or a coach that hasn't done a good job. I'm not over there watching film every day, so I certainly don't know what he does and does not like about his program. That's his business. But I do think it's nothing new for coaches to use the media, to prod or stick a poker in one of his kids. Spurrier used to do it all the time.
Yes, he sure did. I remember the most memorable example to me is, I don't remember what year it was. I think it might have been 14 after you were already gone, and they had started to slide, with their talent. But they had a really poor defensive game. I want to say maybe it was against Missouri or something. And he's being asked about the defense in the press conference, and he says, "I don't know. I guess we'd have to ask Whammy about that, Lorenzo Ward. Let's bring Whammy in here." And Lorenzo Ward was paraded in there to face the questions, and I've never seen anything like that. But yeah, Spurrier was a different dude, as you were well aware.
Well, he did that before I got there.
Oh, did he? That was
Ron Cooper.
Okay.
Ron Cooper, one of my buddies. Cooper was secondary coach, and they got beat on a Hail Mary or something near the end of the game, and they were quizzing him about it. He said, "Well, that was unusual, wasn't it? I'm not sure what happened on that play. Let's get Coach Cooper. Somebody go down and get Coach Cooper." When Coop comes in, he had, I don't know if he showered yet or if he's drying off or something, but he's either sweating or half wet or whatever. Anyhow, I came to work there the next year or maybe the year after, but Ron was still there. He was our secondary coach, and we were talking about it and laughing. But Coach, he would do that in a heartbeat. And then the funniest, though, they'd say something about him. He'd say, "Well, yeah, he didn't do that very well. I guess it's my fault. My fault for letting him play."
So, what is your take on this Clemson team based on what you've seen 2 games in?
Well, I think the defense to me has been B minus, B plus. Some of the things that they appear to be doing, I think I see a little bit more zone coverage. I think I've always favored that a little bit. So it's an opinion. This is not an analysis. This is an opinion. Especially if you play a kid that's really mobile at quarterback and you play a high percentage of man coverage, you're going to have him getting out of the box and making 35 and 25-yard runs on critical downs. So I think you have to mix zone a little bit more. And I don't know that he's doing it, but it appears to me that he is. Getting some more turnovers and such in the passing game. I think the pass rush has not been dominant as I thought it would. I'm not sure how deep they are. And that, with big kids, that's important because you want to rotate those guys a minimum every 2 series. If you have the luxury, kids can go out there and keep that level of play, But overall, they've been good enough to win both games, I think. Offensively, I'm really surprised. They had a lot of their kids out in spring ball, and they were older, experienced kids. But I just still say, reps are reps. And sometimes when you don't have any reps for 6 months because you were nursing a shoulder repair or a knee or something like that, you can get rusty. But they've got an experienced group up front, and they've got what I think are talented backs. I don't think any of them are going to take over a game. But that doesn't mean you can't have an effective running game. You got to commit to it. You got to spend time on it in practice and time on it in the game. And if it didn't work in the first quarter, you can't just abandon it, because that's what just defensive coordinators love that. And almost any opponent we ever went in, we always said, got to stop the run and we got to try to hit the quarterback. And we won't see him get up off the ground at least 6 times first quarter or first half. And we didn't get all wound up and chewing on the kids if they hit a few passes on us. If we stayed in that same mode and we kept that running game down and the quarterback was getting hit a little bit, by the second half, you could just turn up, and pin years back and go after the quarterback, because you could make the coordinator become single-minded and they just abandon the run. So it's a strategy. You got to try to do it on defense. Offensively, you have to be patient. You have to be mentally tough, and you have to never abandon the running game. Clemson was a good example. Last game, they stuck with it, and toward the end, they had some good runs. I used the running back, Adam, fumbled early in the box, coming up into the box. That's because he hasn't run up in the box a whole lot as a college football player. And that ball wasn't exactly protected as much as it needed to be, because he's still learning how to run with running back posture, with shoulders down and forward lean, etc. And somebody got a good punch on the ball and turnover. But he came back into the game and made some really good runs up in the box, protected the football. I think he had broke off a 20-yarder one time. So that's the thing about a running game. If you watch the pros, they seldom abandon it, even if it's not working early. They'll come back to it, and they have to protect the quarterback. Cade, I can't explain, except if you don't run the ball but for 30 yards against LSU, don't come tell me how bad Cade Klubnik is. I mean, God, who is going to be successful in that situation against the defense? And LSU fixed their defense in the offseason. They went out and got some guys in the secondary, and they're legit on defense. They're as good as anybody in the SEC right now. So you can't run for 30 yards and want Cade to rescue you every game. He did it versus Texas last year. Almost came back and pulled them within reach, but had no running game after Moffa got hurt. His shoulder was bothering him. So that's all I can see. And it's easy to sit here and analyze it when you're not in there watching film and you're not, working with them every day and so forth. But it just, when you look at it with any common sense, you got to have a decent running game or the whole thing starts to cave in.
Yeah, supporting that, you mentioned how they went to the run to start the third quarter against Troy. They get to the end zone, and I believe their next drive, it was hard play action. Safety comes up on that to bite on that. Bryant West goes wide open. Is that really what you're getting at? Just how one sets up the other?
That's another part of it that's entirely critical. It's tempting when you got Cade Klubnik, you got an experienced offensive line, you got a group of receivers, including the tight ends, and every one of them is a legitimate major college target out there who can make plays. It's tempting to try to throw every one of them a ball the first 5 minutes. And I just don't think you can do that, because once you expose the fact that you're not going to be patient enough to run the football, you're going to get a different attack from the defense. And if they've got really good players, it's going to cave in on you. You got to be able to run the football. What all does that do? You just said it. Sets up play action. It burns clock. It keeps possession time. A good running game is the best defense on the other side of the bench. You go out there and hit an 80-yard touchdown on the first play of the series. I'm happy as a defensive coordinator, but I'd rather see you have a 10-play drive and we're sitting over on the bench for about 5.5, 6 minutes. Those things help in the overall complexion of the game. So it's not just about scoring points. That doesn't always help anybody but the offense. But running game, to me, you keep adding it up and adding it up. Coach Howard, he always said he didn't like throwing it because too many bad things can happen. You can get it incomplete, you can get intercepted, you can get the quarterback hit. Hell, I'm going to run the ball.
Yeah, the last the last carry by a running back against LSU came on the first play of the third quarter. It was a 6-7 yard run by Adam Randall.
Yeah, and that, you say, well, hell, they were behind. They were behind the touchdown.
No, they were up 10-3.
They were up?
Yeah, at halftime. They were up 10-3.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry. You said at the end of the third quarter.
No, I'm sorry. To start the third quarter, it was the first play of the third quarter was a give to Randall, and he had like a 6-yard run, and that was the last time a running back got a carry for Clemson.
Good Lord, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, at some point, somebody's got to just go down and say, hey, we got to run the ball more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help to do it on Sunday. I didn't know that. And they were not having success on the LSU front, don't get me wrong. But you got to still keep punching it. And don't let them think you've forgotten about it. They have to think you're going to still run the football. The other thing I saw in this last game, which I had not seen much of, if any, before, there was a lot more pull schemes. Mm-hmm. And that what you have in that, as opposed to just zone, is you have linemen down blocking or double teaming and then pulling. And sometimes they're just pulling that tight end. But that allows offensive linemen to be physical and turn it loose a little bit. And there's nothing harder on an offensive lineman than to run a system that doesn't let them be aggressive. I've always thought that the physicality of your football team would always originate in your offensive line. And you can say, well, what about a hard-hitting safety? What about a dominant defensive lineman? What about a 250-pound fullback? I mean, you come up with all kinds of things that help you be physical. But if your offensive line is a really physical bunch, I think that's the character of your team. Because, college, you always work against each other all the way through spring and preseason. So you kind of take on a little bit of the identity of the other side of the ball in a college program. And so if you run things every play, if you're running something where they don't have a chance to come off the friggin' ball, then that gets hard on the lineman. And zone blocking, ain't nothing wrong with zone blocking. And pass pro, okay. But none of those allow an offensive lineman to really tee off and be physical with a lineman in front of him.
You said something I had not thought about when you mentioned how many guys were out during the spring, particularly on the offensive line. It was, I want to say it was Tristan Lee, the left tackle, Elijah Thurman, one of the guards who started the last game. He was out. Colin Sadler, left guard, I believe he was out during the spring. Walker Parks was out during the spring. They were all recuperating from postseason surgeries.
Yep.
But over the last couple of weeks, as I've been trying to figure out what's wrong with this offensive line, that was not on my radar. I hadn't even thought of that. But it seems it seems valid to me as it being a part of it.
Well, it's something you have to overcome. Now, if you're going to get something, if you're going to get a cleanup surgery, that's the time you got to do it. I mean, you got to, as soon as the season's over, you got to get it done, and then you're not going to miss or have a problem with anything as it gets ready to open the fall. So if you got to pick your poison, you get it cleaned up immediately, and they may still be rehabbed in the spring, and so be it. Now, the other thing is, again, everybody was hyping the offensive lineman because of all the returning experience. And then when they don't just go out there and just crush somebody and run for 250 yards, everybody thinks they're terrible. I don't know. I mean, I don't grade them, and I don't watch them in particular. I don't know if they've done that bad a job. If they didn't take over the line of scrimmage against LSU, it's disappointing, but does that mean they ain't going to be worth a crap? I mean, I still think, again, LSU probably one of the better defensive teams in America. So, they lost by 7 points, and it looked like junk in certain times during the ball game. But I think more so than anything, they just lost patience, and that comes from expectations. You come into a game with all these expectations, and you can't hit home runs, and you quit trying to get base hits and steal second or bunt the ball and move this guy over. You just abandon all that and just keep trying to hit home runs. And you get to the end of the damn game, you've got 17 strikeouts.
Have you watched much of Georgia Tech's offense?
I saw them against just TV stuff. Virginia Tech, just a little bit. And then I didn't really watch it, but I was keeping an eye on when they went out to Colorado. I don't think Colorado was really good this year. They lost too many good players last year, and they've had a lot of distractions and tough environment now with Sanders being out, and being ill and hospitalized and all that surgery. I just do not believe that's not pulling on that football team.
Mm-hmm.
But they played a Power 4 team on the road and won. And they've come home and played a 1AA team and had no trouble. The other thing that scares me since Brent's been there, they've got 11 wins as an underdog.
Mm.
So if you saw anything about them, the game I saw, and half the team could be gone by now from that year. But if you saw that Georgia game from last year, they got a quarterback. Haynes King is a tough son of a gun. And they have a hard mentality as a football team. And that doesn't bode well for somebody that is still not physically running the football very well.
Yeah.
They're a dangerous opponent. Now, I think Carolina and Clemson are favored on the betting lines. If Carolina plays like they've been playing and Vanderbilt plays like they've been playing, Carolina's going to get beat.
Mm-hmm.
And if Clemson plays like Clemson's been playing, Tech plays like they've been playing, Clemson's going to get beat. Now, do I think that's going to happen? My gut feeling is both of them going to win. But it is a tough matchup, a lot tougher than anybody thought it was back in August.
Clemson at the second and third levels on their defense has guys who are quite inexperienced, including two, Ronan Hannafin, the safety, and Tink Kelly, the nickelback, who were on offense before, who are just getting their first taste of defense. There's another safety who didn't play much last year, who's a starter now, Ricardo Jones. When you're facing that complex of an offense that Georgia Tech has, with all the shifts, all the motions, like 30 different ways of running a counter, not to mention what you mentioned about Haynes King and the way they spread it out, and he's so dang good at just knowing the offense and choosing the right options. How scary is that, just with the inexperience that I just referred to?
Yeah. The thing I noticed last game, I don't think they played anybody on second team at linebacker the whole game. It was, what's his name?
Woodaz and Sammy Brown?
Woodaz and Brown. I think they went the whole way. Now, they're good players. And, sometimes you wonder if the guy behind them is too much of a drop-off or what. But if you don't trust them, meaning the backups, maybe they just can't make the calls and set the defense and adjustments and all that real good, then you get nervous about putting them in a tight ball game. Out back, uh, safety's more than corners, but safeties have to be good at recognition of all that stuff and be in the right place. You know, what we used to always say, you know, if this defensive tackle lines up wrong or gets beat, your linebacker, you got to make him right. If he gets gapped out, you better get over to the next gap. Yada yada. You know, if he lines up wrong, get him lined up. Then you can almost take it to the second level a little bit. You got a really, really smart safety back there. He always knows what's going on. He can shoot some stuff up better than linebackers, and they can cure a lot of problems before they start. If they're extremely young at safety and not experienced, that can be a problem. And I didn't notice that Georgia Tech was all that multiple. I just knew that they were not afraid to run Haynes King on a bunch of. He's almost like a wildcat.
Yeah,
they do not care if he gets hit, man. And then he's a very efficient thrower. I don't think he's a great thrower. I don't think he's a top round NFL player at all. But he can do a lot of different things, and he's just so dang durable and tough. So, I mean, you bring up some good things there, and you've obviously maybe looked at it more than I have. But that would be a concern of getting people, you know, misaligned or whatever. And, you know, it's up to Tom to maybe throw out a third of the game plan. Take the calls down there. You know you're going to do correctly, and you got better athletes, and everybody step up and play.
If Clemson's defensive line is dominant, you know, it is what we thought it would be going into the year, like totally elite Saturday. Is that the most important thing? Can that cover up those vulnerabilities, potential vulnerabilities on the back end that we talked about?
It would help. It would help. And again, you know, I haven't looked at them enough to analyze Georgia Tech. I'm not sure you're not right I'm not sure that you're right. That's the biggest factor, you know, in matchups would be Clemson's defensive front against Tech. If they disrupt that running game and hit Haynes King enough and affect his throws, I think that'd be huge. On the other hand, I still go back. If they don't find the running game and have something to lean on at critical times in the game, then they're going to be in trouble. And you just can't, you know, that stat you told me a while ago, it still baffles me.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they tried one run on the first play of the third quarter.
One running back run. They had a jet sweep later in the game. They had a couple of design runs for Cade, but other than that, no running back run after that first run.
That's amazing. Now, you do that, you're obviously saying, you know, the running backs are not going to be productive. We get somebody else to carry it. And they come up with some way to try to do it. And you can't fault the coach if that's what they analyzed. But you got to get that fixed, or you're not going to be a good football team.
You know, Ellis, they haven't really run Cade much very little. I think the main thing with his legs has been he's been leaving the pocket too quickly, and so they're worried about that. But I kind of feel like, and tell me if you agree with this, if they get him going with zone read stuff, design runs, if he gets going with his legs, that could open up a lot of things. It could get him in rhythm. It could make the running back running game open up, and then thereby, of course, also open up the passing game. Do you subscribe? Do you think that's a valid or?
Yeah. If it helps him as a player, I think that would be very important. He's had some runs, and you know, since he's been here, and you know, they flash in your mind. And I forgot who it was. He streaked at about 60 yards on. It might have been in the playoffs, but I don't think he's the type of guy that you go into the game saying we need to establish Cade in the first half, get him about 7 or 8 design runs. I don't know. And, he may not have played all that good, but I think there's a big drop off if he's not in there.
Yeah.
The passing game will still be pretty good, but you can forget about CD's not a runner. He's not afraid to run it, and he can run it, but he ain't gonna break it for 20. And so you don't get the production out of it, and you're gonna get him taking hits. So I go back. I think unless they have looked at it and say, hell, we just ain't got it. They better get the offensive line and the running back room and tight ends too. And they better establish a ground game. Do they need to run for 190? No. But they better pick up some 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s, and they better be able to punch the ball in when they get down to the red zone. And they need to be able, on critical downs, to find a running game that people have to respect. And I don't think you can do that with jet sweeps and quarterbacks. I think you got to have a decent running game.
Fair points for sure. Well, Ellis, 2 weeks have been an adventure here and everywhere else. We'll see what week 3 brings us. It should be fun, and it's always interesting. But I really, unless you have anything else to add, any other thoughts, I really appreciate your time.
Well, I enjoyed it. Like I tell you, it's been a tough week on these talk shows. Everybody's upset and ready to kill the coach or fire the players or something. Everywhere I've been on the radio, it's been something. But hopefully we can get them turned around. I think it's going to be a really tough test for Clemson. I really do.
What's your advice if they come back to Clemson fans if they come back from Atlanta 1 and 2?
Oh, I don't have any advice to anybody. And I got a son on the team. I'm going to be as down as anybody. The fans ain't going to solve it, with whatever they do. And I just, I will be surprised if they are, but they've got to play better. If they get Tech at home at night, and they've been playing up to their level of talent, and Clemson has not. And so, it's going to be a game where Tech's not going to lose the ball game. You're going to have to go down there and beat them. And they've got the weapons to do it. But it's going to have to be better than it has the last 2 weeks. So I'm afraid they're going to end up in a tough situation.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, thanks so much for adding us to your very busy list of radio and podcast appearances. It's always a lot of fun with you.
Anytime, man. Enjoy it.
All right. I consider myself a football junkie, but I'm an amateur football junkie. It is always cool to get a window and insight from real football people like Ellis Johnson and Eric McLean. They almost always present different ways of looking at things that you hadn't really considered, and that really further educate you as you're trying to learn more about the game. Thanks so much to our sponsors for continuing to help make this happen, and really appreciate all of you for continuing to listen. Enjoy the football this weekend, folks. Cheers.